Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the latest tech talk on IEEE 802 networking standards, and today we're focusing on 802.11 wireless LAN technology, also known as Wi-Fi. My name is Jennifer McLean. I'm Senior Manager of Education Products with IEEE Educational Activities, and I will be helping to moderate today's event. IEEE is the world's largest technical professional organization dedicated to advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. Please note a few housekeeping items before we get started. At the bottom of your screen are engagement tools that are resizable and movable, so you can move them around to make the most out of your dashboard space. If you have questions for today's panelists, you can submit them through the Q&A widget on your screen, or click the purple Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen, and we'll answer as many questions as time allows. If you click the green resources icon at the bottom of your screen, you'll find more information about IEEE 802 standards and past and future virtual events. Finally, the on-demand link for today's Tech Talk will be emailed to all registrants approximately 2 hours after we finish, and the slides from today will also be available to you. If you'd like to tweet about this event, please use the hashtag IEEELearn. Our panelists today are Paul Mikulich and Dorothy Stanley. Paul is chair of the IEEE 802 LAN-MAN Standards Committee, overseeing 75 active standards and the 50 concurrent projects for wired and wireless networking applications. Dorothy Stanley is an HPE fellow and head of standard strategy at Aruba, an HPE company, and she's the chair of the IEEE 802.11 Wireless LAN Working Group. And so now I'll turn it over to Paul to kick things off.
Yeah, hi everyone, welcome. And before we get started, I'd just like to give you our standard disclaimer that whatever you hear today is my and Dorothy's personal view and not a position of the IEEE. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dorothy to the Tech Talk series. I've hosted a number of these, and this should prove to be a very interesting one. The 802 organization is organized into working groups, as you see in this slide. We've got overview and architecture and bridging group and vertical network applications, which are common across all the technologies. And then we have working groups that are broken up on a per technology basis. The 802.11 Wireless LAN Working Group is focused on wireless LANs, and it happens to be the largest group in 802. 802 is about 750 active participants, and Dorothy just told me that she has about 500 active participants in her group, and you'll see a lot of work going on in the group that Dorothy is going to be sharing with us. So with that, let's get started. Dorothy, tell us about the key drivers behind the 802.11 Working Group's success in the marketplace and how you're able to attract so much interest.
Thank you, Paul. I'd like to add my welcome to everyone who's listening to this call and attending in person, as well as those who will be viewing later offline. Delighted to have you interested in the 802.11 standards and working group, and I hope you find this talk informative and educational. So 802.11 has been active for on the order of 30 years, and all within the IEEE standards development organization and structure. So we have been able to, via that structure, provide market-based standards to the industry that provide very relatively low-cost and accessible products. So you see the chart here showing 4 components, really, of the 802.11 standard success. In Paul's slide, he showed 802.3, of course, Ethernet, wired technologies, optical technologies, as well as other 802.15 wireless technologies. And so in the wireless space, you see the unique aspect of regulatory support, that we do interact with regulatory bodies to gain access to unlicensed spectrum. In our case, license exempt or unlicensed spectrum. The IEEE provides the consensus-based open structure for standards development, and this is the process that we've been using on market-based standards. The backwards compatibility, this has been a design goal and capability in the development of the .11 standard over the various generations, and really has enabled an increasingly large base of devices and technologies to be supported, so that a customer's investment in their embedded base is not stranded. So let's go to the next slide then.
Yeah,
and
excellent,
I think,
Dorothy.
Paul, I'll drive from here.
Yeah, you take it from here, and
if that's
please.
agreeable.
Yes,
Okay.
that makes sense. Dorothy, so yeah, please give us a quick overview of the projects that you consider to be the pillars of 802.11 Working Group success.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to do that. You see on the slide before you 4 generations of Wi-Fi technologies. Wi-Fi is the market branding name of 802.11 standards in the marketplace, developed by the Wi-Fi Alliance. And so shown here are the Wi-Fi 4, 5, and 6, as well as 6E and 7 technologies in a very brief format. So 11N, which the standard was ratified in 2009, provided support for both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz operation. It was the first of the .11 standards to introduce wider channels, and now we view, of course, 40 megahertz as not that wide, but in that time frame it certainly was, to be able to support wider channels and get increased throughput in those channels. Of course, riding the technology curve with additional modulation techniques, more streams, and importantly, backward compatibility with the prior generations of 11B, 11A, and 11G technologies. 11N defined operation up to 600 megabits per second. And you have to remember at the time, I'm sure if you're a student here in the audience, you maybe were 10 years old at that time, 600 megabits was a lot. Now, in some cases, we don't think it's so much, but the standard did support up to those bandwidths. And it enabled, or speeds, if you will. And this was the first standard that really enabled offices and different applications to go wireless only. And that trend has just continued. 11AC, published in 2013, also known in the industry of Wi-Fi 5, focused on 5 gigahertz only. You see wider channels, increased modulation, et cetera, still the backwards compatibility, and a significantly increased data rate, up to the standard supporting up to 7 gigabits per second. 11AX, another in the series of foundational MAC and PHY standards that have been developed in the .11 working group, supports uniquely not only 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz, but 6 gigahertz operation. The opening up of the 6 gigahertz band, and recall that we mentioned regulatory on the prior slide, the opening up of the 6 gigahertz band has been a relatively recent development, but now we have just under 40 countries representing over 1 billion people who have, that the regulators have made either 500 or 1200 megahertz available for license exempt operation under certain conditions, primarily indoor applications, though some outdoor applications are also supported, but to meet the market needs for bandwidth and for enabling the economic development that really the .11 standards and Wi-Fi technologies bring to their economies. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So Wi-Fi 6, this is the technology that's in the market today. And the standard itself was ratified a few months ago in January and is expected to be published very shortly, perhaps this week or next week. And the Wi-Fi 6E nomenclature is the term given to 6 gigahertz operation. 11BE is, okay, I know we have limited time. 11BE is coming. This will be the next major MAC-PHY amendment, again, on the 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz bands for operation in those bands. Back to you, Paul.
Very good, Dorothy. Just as a point of interest, maybe if you could comment on the amount of time and effort it took to finish the 802.11ax amendment, and roughly how many pages that consists of.
Okay, so generally in standards development, to use an analogy, we are running a marathon. This is not a sprint that gets done in 6 months or even a year. These are multi-year efforts, typically on the order of 5 to 7 years. The 11ax project was started, I believe, in 2014, so it went on the order of 7 years.
Yeah, with hundreds of people working on it diligently that entire time. It's quite impressive.
Yes.
Yeah. So
hundreds of people and, north of about 800 pages of text that was developed.
Yeah, incredible productivity and accomplishments. So tell us about some of the complementary projects that you have going on to these core capabilities in 802.11.
Okay. Let me first just do a very brief acknowledgement to all of those who have worked on the standard over the years. It really is a tremendous dedication of time and effort to get the standard completed and in the market. The 11ax products have been in the market since 2018. So we're having significant market impact with these standards. Okay, so now to talk briefly about additional standards development and projects that are underway. Let's go to, I mentioned 11BE, and here is a little bit more about that standard. Again, under development, and I do want to highlight some of the applications that we're focusing on. You'll see here the note about support for low latency communications. A lot of the 11N, 11AC, and 11ax focused on high efficiency and very high throughput. So here we're looking at not only extremely high throughput, but support for additional applications in terms of low latency. And then we need to look at some of the other amendments under development. So I'll show a couple of slides here in terms of usage models and features where there's additional work under development. We have amendments under development, 11AZ, looking at next generation positioning features to support indoor location applications. We have a group, 11BD, working on automotive enhancements for next generation V2X. And a project that just finished, 11BA, Wake Up Radio, to enable very, very low power radio operation. This is really a systemic generational effort that pretty much in every standard there is a technology or some new mechanism added to improve the power battery performance of the .11 technologies. And this amendment that was just ratified in March by the Standards Board is called Wake Up Radio, and introduces the ability to have an extremely low power auxiliary radio that listens for traffic and then will wake up the main radio. And so the initial indications are that while not applicable to every device, for example, a device that's plugged in like a laptop, you might not be the primary application, but for many, many devices, Internet of Homes, Internet of Things, smart homes, et cetera, this may have some application. Okay, I see that we're looking at the, let's see. All right, so I did have this slide, so I was going through those for focusing on IoT. Here we can talk about not just 11BA technologies which are applicable, but also the 11AX technologies and other, for example, target wait time that enable Wi-Fi 6 devices in a 20 megahertz mode, 20 megahertz operation to really continue to serve IoT applications. So, Paul, another question from you, and then I'll continue on.
Yeah. Tell us some more about the usage and features that you have for these additional complementary activities, like your indoor location, the automotive, the wireless sensing. Those are all very interesting projects to enhance the feature set that you guys are specifying.
Okay. Let's take a look at, let's see.
The one I like the most
slide
is the wireless sensing. So if you could spend a couple seconds on that, that would be great as well.
Okay. Then I'll talk briefly about two amendments that are under development, 11BC with enhanced broadcast service, and then wireless LAN sensing. So 11BC, this is a project that's currently underway. It's not yet published, but looking at some very unique and new use cases for .11 technology that leverage a broadcast uplink. So today in the .11 standard, you have, of course, broadcast capability, but that's from the access point to the client device only, to the station. What this amendment is doing is introducing the ability for client devices to broadcast information up to one of a number of access points. And there are a lot of different use cases that are envisioned here, but you can envision, for example, IoT sensor devices or controllers or other devices that need to connect to the internet, but don't necessarily need to go through one particular access point. They just want to get to the internet through any access point that's available. So with the mechanisms here and the new security mechanisms that are introduced, you're able to go from the client device through pretty much any access point back into the network. And in the past, we looked at some energy-related use cases for utilities to get data from various devices in the home in a more seamless way. I think this technology will enable that. Okay, and then wireless LAN sensing. I think that is here. This is another project that is just underway that's gotten a significant amount of attention, but this is using the .11 protocol mechanism, so a communication standard and communication protocols to enable a new application of sensing. And you see some of the applications and use cases that are envisioned here, ranging from smart home to recognizing gesture, perhaps in gaming and other applications, and detecting presence or proximity. There are a lot of use cases here. And this technology is envisioned not only in the lower bands, the frequency bands below 7 gigahertz, but in the 60 gigahertz bands above 45 gigahertz.
Yeah, Dorothy, what I really like about this project, it shows how resilient we are as an organization in terms of being able to expand into areas that are not necessarily core, but high value. Like this particular project doesn't require any devices to be on a person or an object. You can sense if somebody is moving around the room, which in the case of people like myself that have older parents, it would be nice to be able to monitor how well they're doing remotely using this technology. And then for healthcare, there's also the potential for breathing rate detection and even heart rate detection in a contactless way. So I'm really looking forward to the outcome of this project.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. And, you know, projects such as this one, 11BF, have really brought in a lot of new attendees into the .11 working group to work on these new applications. And again, here, we're taking a communications technology, using the communications protocols to, and some of the very desirable characteristics of those protocols, such as the ability to listen before talk and contend in a polite manner for the medium, so that the medium is used effectively, to use those protocols to accomplish a new purpose and application.
Yep. So go ahead, give us a couple more samples.
Okay. So let me highlight just one or two items, and then I know we'll go to questions. I want to highlight two more technologies. One is 802.11ah. And as an example of a marathon activity, but 11ah is a standard that was published in 2016 that addresses operation in the sub 1 gigahertz band, so under 1 gigahertz. And this technology and the characteristics of that RF spectrum are such that you get longer range performance. You get much better penetration of signals through walls and other obstacles. We also introduced a number of features to enable very low power consumption. Because of the bandwidths that are supported, you see some of the phi rates here and the bandwidths. But the phi rates, you know, because you're talking hundreds of kilobits per second or up to the megabits per second, you can support operations for IoT devices, for example, where you have bidirectional communication and you have delivery of firmware updates and over-the-air software updates and the like. Because you, again, have the reasonable data rates, let's just say, you're able to support TCP/IP natively. You know, so you don't have to jump through hoops for that kind of operation. So there's a lot of interest in the 11AH standard, and this technology is being introduced by the Wi-Fi Alliance under the name Wi-Fi Halo. There's a lot of industry interest for factory and automation applications. I have the link in the, or you can search in Japan, there's an 11AH promotional council looking at, you know, what all you can do with this technology. And so this we're expecting to be in the market within the next year or so. And here are some of the, so that was the first, well, let me go back one more to 11AH. That some of the use cases that are envisioned here, from industrial automation, agriculture, horticulture, city farming. There's a very interesting use case here in Europe of a place that did plant breeding. And when you do plant breeding, you really have to monitor the environmental conditions and the soil conditions and the temperature conditions and everything for the plants. And so they were looking at a very low cost mechanism or technology to do that. And this would seem to fit the bill for them. And you see the other applications listed here.
Dorothy,
Paul, I'll stop there because I could go on for a long time, but perhaps you'd like to get to questions.
Yeah, I do. And there is a question that is particularly suited to this slide, is they're asking about how can you provide bounded latency using the 802.11 protocol? And that's an interesting area because for factory automation, you need to have very tight control over how long it takes to issue a command and receive feedback from a system. And we're working on that generally in 802. 802.1 is working on time-sensitive networking. 802.3 is working on enhancements to enable it. So the question is, Dorothy, what are you guys doing to facilitate time-sensitive networking?
Okay, great question. And this is an area of active work, ongoing, particularly in the 11BE project. So you should be seeing that slide now. You see the goals there of the usual higher throughput, but with support for low latency applications. So low latency, low jitter, bounded operation. And you mentioned also the work going on across 802, 802.1 and time-sensitive networking applications. We are working, and again, under the 802 umbrella, we're working very closely with the 802.1 time-sensitive networking group to look at their standards and what are some of the tools and techniques that we can adapt and basically just bring in to work on top of our Mac and PHY, as well as some new features that for a wireless medium that we need added to the 802.1 TSN specification. So I would encourage people, if you're interested in that problem, and there are some very interesting solutions and techniques being proposed, to become involved in the in.11 and particularly in 11BE.
Yeah, it's a particularly challenging issue with contention-based protocol like 802.11. And I know that the BE project is looking at ways to maybe move away from purely contention-based and maybe get more towards time division, multiple access approach. But it's a challenge, contention-based and unlicensed. It's a big, big challenge to ensure that you have guaranteed time of delivery for your packets. So we've got another.
The other piece that comes in there is when you're talking about industrial applications that require very tight control. Industrial applications, those are facilities and environments where the owner or the operator of the facility typically is in control of the wireless unlicensed environment. Okay, and so there, I think the opening up of the 6 gigahertz band for some of these type of applications will be very beneficial. So for example, 2.4 and 5 would retain the existing applications, and to be able to put some of these new very low latency, very high requirement applications in a particular area of 6 gigahertz indoors is exceptionally promising.
Yeah. So Dorothy, while you've got this slide up, we've got another question regarding why do we need a wake-up radio protocol in 802.11 when we have 802.15.4?
Because consumers and product developers want options. And so there are a lot of unique aspects of the 802.11 Mac and PHY operation in terms of no need for gateways and easy access to TCP/IP, and to be able to leverage an existing deployed base without a second network. So when a developer is looking at, okay, which connectivity technologies am I going to put in my device, depending on the application and the use case, they will weigh a number of factors. So, there's really a no one-size-fits-all application, particularly in the IoT space, where you have multiple technologies. You have maybe Bluetooth for Bluetooth Low Energy for location devices. You have Zigbee for, industrial control, your air conditioner control, et cetera. And so you really want both. And there, the problem then becomes for the organization and the IT department to manage all that stuff. Because, you have 10,000 sensors, you have to manage them, right? You have to know where they are, you have to manage them. And so that's where, vendors bring a value add in their products to provide a management capability for the end devices across technologies.
Yeah, we do the best we can to make sure that the projects we start have distinct identities to serve particular market sectors, but inevitably there is some overlap in the capabilities that we're developing. But each project within 802 has a robust participation, robust set of stakeholders. So we do the best we can in terms of making sure that there are clear, distinct boundaries for each of the projects. Dorothy, we have reached the bottom of the hour. I was wondering before we leave if you could let the audience know how can they get involved in 802.11? What does it take?
What does it take? So at this immediate moment, it takes interest and the ability to dial into a teleconference bridge. So with the pandemic, we're meeting electronically. So if you go to the 802.11 website, you'll see to the right a list of all of the ongoing teleconferences. So for the last year, we've been meeting exclusively online. So we have every 2 months a plenary or interim session, and then the teleconferences to continue the work are happening basically daily for the various groups. So, you get an IEEE web account, you dial into the bridge and, do your research and homework. All the submissions are online. So you can look at the contributions that people are making towards development of the standard, various amendments also. And basically an interest in the technology, new ideas. If you have new ideas for a project, we have a group called Wireless Next Generation, where people bring presentations of new projects or new technologies that they'd like to get feedback from the group on and potentially start a new project. You can also contact me. My email's on the internet and the .11 website, and happy to discuss with you about how to get involved.
Excellent. Thank you, Dorothy. Yeah, your point about the documentation and presentations, all the contributions that are made in 802 are publicly available. We have a document server called Mentor, and we pride ourselves on being completely open and transparent. So any of our information, 99.9% of the information regarding 802 is publicly available. So I encourage you to go to our website and look around and get engaged. Just as Dorothy said, just come to our meetings, which are really easy now that everything is virtual. But I must say, in closing, I really, really miss in-person meetings. There's no substitute for being with the group in person. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up. Dorothy, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And everyone that has been listening in, thank you very much for listening in. And as Jennifer said earlier, the slides and a recording of this WebEx or Tech Talk will be made available shortly. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Paul.